Hi everyone, I'd just like to talk to you about something which I've found is a fantastic way to catch fish, and that's soft baiting. You know, in this day and age, a lot of people say, oh, the fishing is not as good as it used to be, but then the tools we've got to catch fish have never been so good. We've got all this new technology, better rods, better reels, better things to put on the end, and things that are going to get those trout and salmon really excited. So I'd like to talk to you about soft baiting, something which I've spent quite a lot of time doing and have been so impressed with how effective it is. Now, my background is fly fishing, and I spent 25 years only chasing fish on a fly when I was trout fishing, and I got quite pure about that. I had a bit of a halo which I managed to polish up every now and again, and then one day I went out with someone who was very good at using soft baits, and it changed my whole life. I saw the potential in it because it's actually not that different from fly fishing, except it doesn't need the skills. Or if it's a windy day, you can go soft baiting. If it's a day where you can't see into the water very well, guess what? You can still go soft baiting. In fact, it does really, really well there. But there are a few rules that you need to know, and I'd love to be able to work with that. The first thing is you need the right sort of gear. And the further I've got involved in soft baiting, the more I've gone to a longer rod. I believe long rods are very useful because, you know, the essence of soft bait is trying to make it look realistic. In fact, in many ways, it's like fishing with a fly, in the sense that you're setting something out there that looks fish-like and definitely worth eating from a trout or a salmon's point of view. You can't stop them from moving. If you put them in your finger and you hold on to one, it just wobbles right away. And so you want to maximize this. It's not like you're tying on a Tassie Devil or a Toby or something like that and you're going to cast it into the wild blue yonder, and then you're going to wind like as quickly as you possibly can in order to be able to get that from going to the bottom. You can use a soft bait in a suspended way. You can cast it out and then just quietly retrieve it. If it's in a river, I tend to cast upstream. So you can cast across the stream, but remember, when you cast across a stream or across a river, it tends to lift the whole thing up because you get the drag of the line on the water. So I cast this thing upstream and I wind it down just faster than the current. Or if in a lake, what I'll do is I'll cast into the lake and just let it sink. So I'm busy just staying in contact, making sure that I can feel what's going on at the other end, waiting for something to come along as it's going down, looking like that's a feed, and it will come along and just pick it up. A bit like a snapper picking up a bait, for those of you who've done a bit of snapper fishing. I love that feeling, casting it out, leaving it, and then as I wind it in, just a little retrieve in a lake, and then a wee bit of a jiggle, and then another wee retrieve. And what you're doing is you're causing it to go up and down. Looks extremely lifelike. And my experience with this, and I've done a lot of this in the likes of Lake Coleridge, which of course is quite local, Lake Sumner, and various of our other areas around here, is extremely good for catching fish. It is a fantastic method. And when I'm with people who are casting pieces of metal out there, I'd normally catch 4 or 5 fish to their one. Now that should get you noticing that there could be a difference. So I like a long rod. I prefer a rod around 9 foot. In fact, we've developed quite a few of them. I've had some made especially for our store that are designed to cast very lightweight, big distances. Now, of course, you can cast a fly rod quite a reasonable distance, but when you're doing twice the distance or even more than that because you've got a really good propulsion system, you can do extremely well. Now, the wonderful thing about soft baiting is that you'll often use very light jigs. The jig head that goes on, you thread it on and make sure that it's always nice and straight. You don't want to have it so that it looks all weird when you're winding it in. It should look very lifelike. I prefer to use paddle tails, but there are all sorts of other things there with curly tails and so forth. And I also prefer to have a soft bait around 3 inches long. Sometimes it's 2.5, sometimes it goes all the way up to 4. It just depends on where you are. But casting that out, then it's just a question of winding it in and waiting for the bite. Now, don't stand in the same place, casting over and over in the same bit of water. It's just like a door-to-door salesman going up to the same door and knocking on it. Would you like to buy my Kirby vacuum cleaner? By the time we've done that 3 or 4 times, the person inside is ready to call the cops. But that won't be the way it is when you're out there fishing. They'll just turn and go somewhere else. So learn to move through the water. There's always more water than you can get past. One of my great sayings over the time is, there's always more water than there is time to fish that water. Okay, so you make sure you cover it quite well. And don't be afraid to change. Change colour, change size, change position, change the jig head weight until you get that feeling of what you should be doing in any particular situation. To my mind, you always need braid on your gear because you want to be able to feel that bite. And it's also very thin. The great thing about using braid, and don't go too fine on your braid, otherwise it'll cause you trouble. But the great thing about braid is that it cuts the wind well and it sits well down in the water as well. So you've got great sensitivity, you know what's going on the other end. I tell you, it's worth giving it a go. And if you want to discuss it more in detail, go into your local tackle store. Of course, we'd love you to come to us, but the reality is, if you get the rules sorted out, you'll just catch so many fish. Definitely worth catching.